Okay. So the area of Shomron is, many call it the Heartland of Israel, and the reason is because it has many sites that are of the kingdom of Israel. So remember, there were two kingdoms. There's the kingdom of Judah, which is the area of Jerusalem, which we spoke about a lot, and there's the kingdom of Israel, which is the kingdom that's split. Now, does anyone want to tell me why the kingdom of Israel is much more poor in terms of the archaeology? We're gonna see a lot of things, but not. First of all, a lot of things. The link is not as conclusive. The evidence is speculative in many cases, as opposed to many of the things that we saw around the Judean Commonwealth. Anyone have an idea why that is? Why the kingdom of Israel that split after the days of Solomon is more scarce in terms of its archaeology? Any thoughts, ideas? Why is it more scarce? Well, so a few things. So first of all, the kingdom of Judah lives for many hundreds of years after the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Israel is expelled in the times of the Assyrians, and so it doesn't have there's no second temple there, right? There's no continuity the same way you have with the kingdom of Yehuda. Take the city of Jerusalem. Besides for a short 70-year hiatus, it is a functioning capital for 500 years after the destruction of Israel. So let's take a look and see exactly what that looks like. We have a few very exciting sites. And again, I just want to be as honest as possible. You have to take a look at every one of these places. And even though there is a link, it's not the same level. It's much more speculative, and there are very important things to be found, but it's not the same level of continuity that you have in the kingdom of Yehuda. So let's dive right into it. So this is from Shiloh to Givon. The first place we're going to see, I don't want to be a spoiler here. The first place we're going to see is the site of Shiloh. Shiloh is mentioned in various contexts. It's in fact mentioned already in the book of Bereshit. It says in the blessings of Jacob regarding his son Yehuda at the end of the book of Genesis, Lo yasur shevet miYehuda umechokek miben raglav ad ki yavo Shiloh. A ruling staff will not be removed from Judah, and a lawmaker from among him until he arrives at Shiloh. Now we interpret this as ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh the Messiah comes, until the end of times. But also it can mean just Shiloh, until the arrival at Shiloh. Then in Yehoshua, you have one of the first things the Jews do in the land of Israel. That's a very important detail, that when the Jews arrive in Israel, they put the Ohel Moed, they put the Mishkan in Shiloh. All right, so now there's a story that I'm going to be talking about also over this weekend that is related to Tu B'Av, but this comes about a bit with a tragedy. Well, not a bit, it's a big tragedy. For those who've read the book of Shoftim, there's the story of Pilegesh Bagiv'ah, which is the first civil war among the Jews. And basically, the entire tribe of Benjamin is ostracized. And the Jewish people take an oath, and they all swear that no one will let his daughter marry a member of the Benjamin tribe. And then they realize that, wait, what's going to happen? There's no more people from Benjamin. They won't be able to get married. They won't have any people. So they advise them, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, basically go kidnap girls in the Kramim and do that in Shiloh. But the idea that is somewhat related to Tu B'Av, although in a much more, unhappy way, is that they take girls in the Kramim and Shiloh, and also it could be done like just the parents didn't sign off on it. But most famously, where is Shiloh famous from? We read it on, I believe, Rosh Hashanah, is the story of Chana. There was a man from Ramatayim Tzofim, Mehar Ephraim, from the Mount of Ephraim, Ushmo Elchanan, his name is Elchanan. And famously, Elchanan has two wives. One is Chana, who is childless. The other is Pnina, who has children. And famously, ve'alaha ishahu me'iro miyamim yamim lishtachavot ve'lizboch la'Hashem tzvaot b'Shiloh. So Shiloh, for hundreds of years, is actually the place of our temple. Yeah, it's more than you would think. Now, here's a map that is from the time of the Byzantine Empire that was found in one of these churches, I guess, and it lists Shiloh as one of the cities in Israel. I do not have the pronunciation of how it was pronounced in I guess Latin is what they spoke, but Shiloh is on the map, and we're going to find that it's actually mentioned in several of the ancient writings that there's this place called Shiloh, because Shiloh used to be the capital of the tribes. You can see here some religious sites. You see this ladder, which could be Beit El, and actually the Navi gives a description of where that is. So just if everyone wants to bear with me, they actually have an amazing site. If ever, just let me know though if you can see it. You'll tell me if you can see it. Can everyone see this? It's actually the best Israeli interactive map of something in Israel. Is everyone able to see this? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see what I see. Yeah, you can see. So this is Shiloh. This is the area. And you can see that it is you have the Ramatayim Tzofim, you have the mountains that surround it. And there's a few places in it. There's the place of Migdal HaRo'eh, which is, by the way, the name Shmuel was given. Shmuel was called the Ro'eh because he was able to see things, but you're able to see things better when you're in the top of the mountains. Here they have a model of the Mishkan today. Today it's a whole site. But the main part of Shiloh is actually right at the top of the mountain. We'll take a look here. We'll come a bit closer. And here is what it looks like. They have this new tower here, and they have a Shiloh Museum. You can really, navigate your way through the site. I'm happy to share it afterwards. Wait, I got now the sun. All right. So here you can see the ancient digs. Yeah, this is the site of Shiloh. And now, if you take a look at how the Mishkan used to operate, the Mishkan used to be, once the Jews came to Israel, it was a hybrid. It had the roof that it had in the Mishkan, and it had the basis of real walls. So over here is approximately where the Mishkan would have been. And here you can see there's a lot of ancient findings of stone, but again, the link that you have in Jerusalem, the same level of knowledge, is not there. You can figure that this was good chance the right place, but to say that this is the site where the Mishkan stood 100% is an opinion. It's not something you can say with certainty. And they have this area called Shvil Olei HaRegel, just like you have in Jerusalem. There's a big path that you can assume fairly that the people who wanted to come to Shiloh were able to go up. And you can see these digs a lot of them are ancient, and a lot of them do come from that time. So yeah, this is the place of Shiloh. If you want to see, they even have an ancient oil press. A lot of these places are, I'm going to show you pictures of it. A lot of these places are indeed very old. I'll show you pictures of this more closely, but you can see there's this oil press over there. You see the round structure where they put the olives, and this is indeed a structure from the time. And again, you can see the rocks are much less refined than the ones you would see in Jerusalem in later periods of time, just because, again, we're talking about a different era. We're talking, sometimes 500 years apart, sometimes 800 years, right? The first Beit HaMikdash is 410 years. The second is 420. And so we're talking about something that is literally 1,000-year difference. So you can't expect the same level of architecture, right? So these are 1,000 years different than the kind of stuff you'd see Herod building. It's much, much different. Yeah, so this is the part of Shiloh, and it is could have been the Mishkan. Many people believe it was. There's a guy named Finkelstein who argues very strongly it is. And I'm going to just quickly show you some of the findings. Now, interestingly, a lot of the findings are very significant. So first, you have these walls that you have standing around. I'm going to show you a quick, if it's okay, a quick video from the air of what the site looks like. It gives you a good idea. The drone footage. So just to clarify a few things. So first of all, you can see that it's a huge compound. I mean, we're not talking about just a few rocks sitting around. You can see that there are, it's a huge area, and it was clearly a center of civilization 3,000 years ago. And so it is likely to have been Shiloh. And later on, and by later on, I mean at the year 200-300, the Crusaders, the Byzantines and the Christians realized that it's a very special place, and they built a church there. Those are the mosaics that you're seeing there from the 2nd and 3rd century. All right, so that is Shiloh. I hope you found it interesting. I'm gonna show a few more items from the location, but here, 1 second. All right, so that is a bird's view of Shiloh. All right, then there's an area called the Mizbeach. Surely it was a place of worship. Again, I'm telling you what the probable things that led people to say, okay, this is a place that was a place of worship. By the way, what term from Hallel does this remind you of? Does anyone have a term from Hallel this reminds them of? What they see? If indeed this is a mizbeach, it is a mizbeach. What does this remind you of? Anyone a term from Hallel? El Hashem vaya'er lanu. Isru Chag. Anyone?
Ad Karnot HaMizbeach.
Ad Karnot HaMizbeach, yes. So you have this Karnot HaMizbeach, and which was common in Mizbechot of the era, where there's a Karnot HaMizbeach. You have the corners of the Mizbeach. All right. These are items from Egypt found in Shiloh, once again showing the significance of the area. And it is, again, we're talking 3,000 years. We're not talking... in Israel, when you say 2,000 years, you're talking modern times almost. So it's a whole different span of time. All right, there are jugs of wine found, and we're going to see, by the way, there's a lot of wine found in Shomron. There's a good reason. I don't know if anyone here has at home any wines from Shomron, but there's a good reason there's this revival wines in Shomron, it's an area that's very conducive to growing grapes and making quality wine. So these are jugs from 3,000 years ago, and these are from 2,000 years ago. You see they're a bit of a different style, yeah, it's a significant site. It is a very good chance the Mishkan, and you can just imagine if you read the story about Hannah standing and praying, what it would look like her standing here. It also makes sense to what did when Shmuel sees Hannah praying spring, what does he tell her? What does Shmuel tell Hannah when he sees her praying? And it says that only her lips are moving. It says, I'm sorry, not Shmuel, Ailee, my bad. What does Ailee say when he sees Hannah praying and her lips are moving, but he can't hear her?
She's drunk.
She's drunk. Now that makes so much more sense with knowing the amount of wine the area produces. So it's an area where people are no one's remaining too dry. It's like there's a lot of wine there. Okay, so here's the site. And again, a shout out to the Grauman's who've done digging in Israel, who've done archaeological digging in Israel. A lot of times they crowdsource and they have people join the archaeologists in digging, and that's what you're seeing here in Shiloh. Again, surely a huge area. Now, here's something you did not know as a Jew, and it's shocking. You can go through 12 years of day school and actually yeshiva and everything, and you'll be shocked to find out about this. How does the Jewish presence in Ailee, in Shiloh, come to an end? So the famous story is that when Ailee hears about the war, he has a heart attack and he falls back on his chair and he dies. And that's the beginning of the era of Shmuel. So the Jews go to war with the Plishtim, and the Plishtim defeat the Jews and take the ark. Ailee hears the terrible news, has kind of a heart attack, falls back on his chair and dies. That happens in Shiloh, but you're not really told what happens next. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyah that says, Ki lechuna el mekomi. He warns the Jews, Jeremiah, he warns them and he says, go to Shiloh, go to my place, and see what I did to Shiloh. Look what I did to the Jewish people. It doesn't say what happened, but it's likely that Shiloh was also destroyed by the Plishtim, the way Jerusalem was. It's not something explicit in the pasuk, but you can kind of read it between the lines. Also, a very interesting quote I thought some would appreciate. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha from the Talmud. Sachli zakenacha, the old man told me, Pam achat halachti leShiloh, this is in the time of the Talmud, veherachti reach ketoret mi ben kotay. Once I went to Shiloh, and I was still able to smell the smell of the ketoret from its walls. We're talking now 800 years, 800 years later, and he says he can still have the fragrance in the walls of Shiloh. All right, now I'm going to take you to a place that's not biblical, but it helps you understand a lot of things about the Mishnah. We're fast forwarding about the 800 years after two temples. Skip two temples. What does this look? Well, I kind of give it away in the title. This is a wine press. So again, the area in Shomron is very abundant, and there's lots of grapes. And this is a commercial wine press. I obviously don't want to tell you how they would press the wine, but if you know, you probably would never have drunk wine in those days because it's kind of gross, right? People would step with their feet. You would have wine pressers. And but yeah, there was a huge amount of wine coming from the area. This is something, can anyone, I hope I didn't give this away. No, I didn't give this away. Can anyone try and guess what this is? What does this look like? You can see it's a human design of a big rock. It's not a wine press. It is a goren. It is a place where you thresh the wheat and smash it and gather it. Yeah, and there's this professor, I honestly would not have thought of this, but what he did in the not in the threshing floor, but in the wine press, he came with his people and he brought water and he flooded it with water. I'm not sure why it worked better than rain. And he was able to get some of the grapes, some of the grape seeds from 2,000 years ago to float up. And he wasn't able to plant them, but he was able to extract DNA and make wine that would taste like it did 2,000 years ago. So yeah, this is a threshing floor, and you can think of the story of Boaz and Ruth. Remember, Boaz goes to sleep on the threshing floor, and that is this is what it would look like. This is what a threshing floor looks like, and it's amazing that it was preserved to this day. Well, it's a rock, but it's still amazing that it stayed. All right, this is also in that area. You have a pool, for gathering, and what I would like to say all these places have in common is you see the incredible industry. We've seen the 3,000-year-old oil press. We've seen the 2,000-year-old wine presses, and now we see the pools in the area. It's an area where you can really live in richness. Now, the prophet often criticizes the kingdom of Israel for decadence and for just drinking and slumbering and just being decadent, but you can see the abundance of the area. It's an abundant area. All right, can anyone guess what this is? Not the same, not in the same upbeat spirit. This is what they called caves for burial. So every family would have one of these. Well, only if you're a wealthy family, but and if you're a king, it's like a whole different level. But yeah, these are caves of burial where they would put family members in. It's not the same way of burial that we have today, meaning it's not necessarily a burial by ground. It's they're put in these caves. All righty, now Giv'on. Giv'on is does anyone remember the word Giv'oni? I'm sure we have someone here who remembers Giv'onim. Anyone remember the Giv'onim? There's a great cheese in Israel called Giv'on, but anyone know, does the Giv'onim sound familiar to anyone?
Only because it's the name of a winery.
Well, so the Giv'onim are the people in the book of Yehoshua. There's a group of people who come dressed up as if they're from a foreign land, but they're actually from close up. And they deceive the Jews to make a covenant with them, which the Jews are not allowed to do with the locals. And they make a covenant with them. That is the Giv'onim. And pretty quickly, Giv'on turns into a sympathetic area from where we have a king even. King Shaul comes from Giv'on. He's from the area of Giv'on. So we're going to see what's of Giv'on. So there's a bama. A bama means a big altar in Giv'on. And you can see that before Shiloh, the Jews had the Mishkan in Giv'on. The Talmud says you had Nov and Giv'on before the Shiloh, the Mishkan and Shiloh. And you can see that, in fact, it is the place before Jerusalem. So Giv'on is where King Solomon goes to, it's like almost like Badekin, when the groom goes to bring the bride. Giv'on is where the Mishkan is right before it's brought to its final place of Jerusalem. And that famous dream, does anyone remember the famous dream with King Solomon being given any wish he wants? Anyone, does that sound familiar? He's given any wish he wants. That happens in Giv'on. So, and it says that he brings 1,000 sacrifices in Giv'on. So it's a very important place. Where is Giv'on? You'll be shocked. Some of you might have been there, but you do not know. I was there, and I didn't know until recently that I was there. What is Giv'on? Has anyone been near Jerusalem? We even call it Jerusalem by now. Has anyone been to a place called Nebi Samuel, the grave of Samuel the prophet? Anyone been to Kever Shmuel and Avi? Do we have anyone? It's right near, if you've been into Jerusalem, it's right near a neighborhood called Ramot, and before a place called Givat Ze'ev.
Oh.
So we would call it Jerusalem, but it's actually far away. If you're thinking about, if you know the place I'm talking about, which is after Ramot, even closer to Modi'in, you know that it's a far place to biblical Jerusalem if you're taking a horse. or a camel or whatever it is. So there's this area near Nebi Samuel, which, by the way, the locals still call to this day Nebi Samuel. And there's this ancient altar there. It's called the Bama. And again, many speculate that this is the Bama of Giv'on, and it's the place the ark rests right before it goes to Jerusalem. Here you have closer pictures, but it's in this area called Nebi Samuel, which I found shocking, that I've been to several times, but you just walk straight into the kever. You're like, what's going on? You don't even bother to ask what all these digs are. You see the path above, you just go straight in, but you don't realize that under you might be the place of the ark. And here's a pit where they would cook things, bake things. It was like a fire pit. All right, now we're going to come to a place I assure you will be the most entertaining place you've learned about. Why? This is a place that is of not exactly Jewish heritage, but it's close. It's Jewish adjacent. Raise your hand or let me know if you've heard of the Shomronims, the Shomronites, the people of they're the oldest frenemies. Well, I don't even know if they're frenemies of the Jewish people. They may be enemies. When the Jews come in Shivat Zion, when Ezra and Nehemiah come and return to Zion and they start rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, there's a group of people who settled there in between while the Jews were in exile in Babylon, in Persia. And they say, wait, what are you guys doing? We don't want you back. We enjoy settling in. We don't want you guys to come. And they start causing trouble and stopping the Jews from building the temple in Jerusalem. They send letters to King Achashverosh and what have you not, asking to stop the construction of the temple. So these are people who are like, wait, we don't want you here. And they adopted some of the customs and faith of the Jews. But they don't like the Jews. They're like, we're the new Jews. And believe it or not, they even build a new Jerusalem competition. This is Nehemiah chapter 4, when Vayhi kasher shama Sanballat v'Tuvia v'Ha'arvim v'Ammonim v'Ashdodim, when Sanballat, who is the Shomroni, and Tuvia and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites hear that Jerusalem is being rebuilt, they start making a war with Nehemiah and the people trying to rebuild, and the Jews have to build and appoint people to guard from the enemies. So there's a lot going on. Now they go and they build something that is a competition. Now I just want to give background before I show you guys two things: a bird's view of the place and something that will blow your mind. Really, it's truly mind-boggling. So these Shomronim build a competition temple in Har Grizim, and they say, we are the true Jews. Sounds familiar? Every now and then there's a group who says, we are the true Jews, right? Not you guys. And they build a temple, and it's mind-boggling because they actually build a full-blown temple in Har Grizim. And they say, no, this is the place that God has chosen. Jerusalem is the unchosen. Right? And they say, we're going to have a temple here. And they actually have a temple that is parallel to the temple in Jerusalem. And they say, they replicate Judaism to be everything but Jerusalem. So they observe all the mitzvot, they admit everything in the Tanakh, but they say, actually, the place that was chosen was Mount Gerizim. To this day, it's a fascinating group. It's one of the most ancient faiths. They have a few hundred people today who are direct descendants, continuous descendants. They say they have 11 commandments. It sounds funny, but they have 11 commandments. And one of the commandments, the one commandment that they added is that everything must be done in Har Gerizim. And they have a continuous presence in Har Gerizim near Shechem to this day for the past 2,000 years. What happened to their temple? Does anyone want to try and guess who destroyed their temple? They had a temple that was competing with the one in Jerusalem. Anyone want to try and guess who destroyed their temple? Who? You got to say it out loud. All right, no guesses. So the person who actually destroyed it was a Hashmonai king. One of the Hashmonai kings says, wait, why is there a temple competing with my beautiful temple in Jerusalem? And he destroys it. He completely destroys their temple. So their temple has about 300 years. It's from the early days of the Persian Empire in Israel, all the way until the Hashmonai kingdom, until it's destroyed by one of the Hashmonai kings. The temple is built with very similar measurements to that of King Solomon, and very similar measurements to the one in the book of Yechezkel, depiction of the third temple.
Yeah.
So this is what it would have looked like. This is just to give everyone an idea. This is a place called Mizbech Yehoshua. This is Elon Moreh, Shechem, Nablus, Itamar, and you're going to see where it is. So you can see Shechem is Nablus, and up above Nablus, there's a place called the neighborhood of the Shomronim. And that is where their temple is. There's a Byzantine church there. It's very, very old. It's 2,200 years old. This is a replica. If you build above, if you superimpose, and it's basically in the image of the first temple. All right, so that's what it looked like. One second. That is what it looked like. And this is what it looks like today. If you look from the air, this is what it looks like. There's a Byzantine church and also the ancient findings of what they had. Now I'm gonna prepare you for something very dramatic. I said I'm gonna show it to you in a second. Here, they observe a lot of the laws that we don't observe. I'm going to show you in a minute. All right, so let me just show you that this location is sacred in the Torah. It doesn't mean it's the chosen place, but you have the famous concept of the Jews being told by Moses that when they come to Israel, they should read the Torah in Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. So it's not like they came up with a completely random place. And it's also a place where Yehoshua builds a mizbeach of 12 stones, which they believe they can point to. And so it's a place that's sacred in Judaism. Now, you're going to be absolutely mind-boggled to find out that they bring korbanot to this day, especially a korban Pesach. Now, of course, in our faith and according to Judaism, this is absolute prohibition. By the way, assuming that they are Jewish. If they're not Jewish, then it may not be a prohibition. But they they observe the Pesach the way it's written. If you've heard about the Tzedukim, it's people who believe in what's written in the Torah and nothing else, not in the Torah Shabbat Peh. And so that's what they do. I'm just going to show you what was found in there. This was their temple. They had it for 200 years. This was their temple. It was a group that, by the way, today is a few hundred people. Back then was 1.2 million people. So it's a huge area, and it's built in the form of the first Beit HaMikdash. They found these many hundreds of coins in the area, and it was their holy temple. And again, they were the enemies of Yehuda. They did not want the temple in Jerusalem to be built. They built it as competition, and eventually it was destroyed by a Hashmonai king. Now, this will absolutely blow your mind. This is what I said. This is the Korban Pesach, the way they bring it. You'll find this, I believe, very interesting. Let me just make sure you're getting this, because it's fascinating. All right, so here is them bringing a Korban Pesach. And by the way, they have a Kohen Gadol to this day. Let me just make sure here. Yeah, here you go.
שמי כהן טאקי, מהעדה השומרונית, חבר ועד בשומרונים. זה נקרא חג קורבן פסח, שמקיימים אותו העדה השומרונית אך ורק בהר גריזים, שמקומו שעקדת יצחק,
So they, in their tradition, everything happened there. It was the place of Akedat Yitzchak. It's the place of Jerusalem. It is the place to be.
הר גריזים זה המקום הקדוש, הר הקדוש של העדה השומרונית. הקורבן הזה, טקס זכר ליציאת מצרים, החירות של יציאת מצרים, ועושים אותו כל שנה.
איך זה הולך להיות בעצם? אתם בעצם מובילים...
So they have a Kohen Gadol to this day, and I believe he drives a Volvo. He comes around, and I think it's the guy here with the blue garment. And yeah, it's kind of it's a fascinating thing to us, right? Because they do many of the things that are written in the Torah that we don't do anymore, like bringing korbanot. But obviously, they were the enemies in the sense that they were the ones writing the king Achashverosh and others not to let the Jews return to Israel.
נכון, כל משפחה מביאה קבר, איך זה הולך?
קודם כל, הכהן הגדול מוזמן על ידי העדה בשבת האחרון לפני החג. כל משפחה מביאה כבש. שמים אותו
So like
מסביב.
in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, every one of them, every family has a sheep. Every family has a sheep, and they bring Korban Pesach, and you're going to see they use all these to prepare the meat.
ברחבה שם. וכל השומרונים מתאספים פה, כל העדה עובדת, נשים, ילדים, גברים, כולם.
And you see that their Kohen Gadol says, "V'shachatu oto kol kahal Yisrael," and within 5 minutes, they all do the shechita.
אחד עם הפקודה שהוא צריך לעשות.
So if you want to imagine what it's going to look like when the Beit HaMikdash is built and people still use their phones to take videos,
giant barbecue.
they are still taking videos.
תפילה על ידי הכהן הגדול. אחרי התפילה, בחצי שעה, עומד הכהן הגדול על המפה ונותן את הפסוק לתת את הפקודה לשחיטה. וכל הכבשים במשך 5 דקות שחוטים, ומתחילים אחר כך לנקות את הכבשים מבפנים. כל מה שיש בפנים צריך לסגור.
She said her husband for the Islamic holidays and share in sheep's
מנקים אותם, מכינים אותם, שמים אותם בסידנים, שיבודים, שמיועדים לרדת בתנורים.
So it says in the Korban Pesach, it can only be roasted and you can't break any bones, and they do exactly that.
זה יהיה בשעה 9:30 מורידים, או 9:15. סוגרים את התנורים עם הבוץ. אחרי 3 שעות שבפנים בתוך התנורים, מוציאים עוד תפילה בנוכח של כהן הגדול, הפסוק של האוכל, ואחר כך הרוב מהשומרים לוקחים את הכבשים לבתים שלהם ואוכלים וחוזרים עם השאר של הבתים, של הכבשים, לא שוברים את העצמות ולא משתמשים לא במזלג ולא בצלחת.
They have this huge preparation of the Korban Pesach together. One second.
במגש הזה לוקחים טיפות, אוכלים, כל מה שנשאר חייבים לחזור למרובע פה, המרובע הזה שם, ושורפים את השאר, שהאש והריח, העשן, יעלה לאלוהים.
Here, 1 second. I'm going to then skip to the part where you see their Torah. You can see it's interesting. They preserved a lot of the Hebrew language the way it was. It's just interesting to see a religion that is so adjacent to Judaism in the sense that they're also into a lot of the practices that are in the Torah. It still exists. It's still an ethnic group that represents the same people it represented 2,000 years ago. Their numbers dwindled tremendously. Again, they went from above 1 million to just a few hundred today. But that area is excavated, and they have their ancient Beit HaMikdash, which stood for about 200 years. So I'm gonna continue because we do have a few more places. But it's just a fascinating concept. So they have an area that's called Mizbeach Yehoshua, 12 stones. It says that when Yehoshua leaves the Jordan after the Jordan splits, they bring 12 stones out of the Jordan, and you have this area called Mizbeach Yehoshua. Now, famously, Moshe tells Bnei Israel when they come, they should go to Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval, stand in between the two, and give this blessings and curses, blessings for whoever keeps the Torah, curses for whoever violates the Torah. The area of Har Gerizim is where the Shomronim are on, but there's also the other mountain, Har Eval. There's a Mizbeach there, and again, it's a whole debate as to what extent, if at all, you can attribute it to the Jews at the time, but it is a Mizbeach that is 3,000 years old. Interestingly, there was a news story which almost sounded like a parody story. It was in the past few months. Has anyone seen the news story about the most ancient Hebrew writing found? So there was this, it was a pop archaeology story about the most ancient Hebrew language tablet found, and it was someone cursing. It was like cursing in Yiddish, I guess. And they found this ancient thing, and it was in Har Eval. And the issue, it did receive criticism. Again, it wasn't peer reviewed like you would want other things to be. But there's this thing that says on it. Here's the curse. It says that I'm not going to even read it. Actually, if a person can read it, you can read it. But it basically sounds like a guy ranting and raving in Yiddish with all the possible curses that he can. And that was found in the past year. It was widely reported, but maybe it will be, I'm sure it will be peer reviewed by some point, but it was recently found. And it's this ancient amulet where someone is basically sending a very strong curse to his friend, like you would find in, let's say, India or something, right? But the difference is, though, here it's talking about Hashem, it's cursing in Hashem's name. All right, Shomron. We just read about it on Tisha B'Av. This is a picture from about 100 years ago. Shomron is the capital city of the kingdom of Israel, King Achav, who ruled the kingdom of Israel. It's all over Tanakh, especially the book of Melachim. The famous story of Navot and the vineyard that Achav coveted and was famously told, have you killed and also inherited? That happens in Shomron. There's an area that's the palace of Achav, a very, very big compound that's like a palatial area of government seat, and that is in the city of Shomron. We do know where the area is. It's called Sebastia. Has anyone ever heard of Sebastia? It's the digging of Sebastia, and it's this palatial area that was both a big place in the times of Achav's kingdom, and also later in the time of the Hellenists in there. This area is called the Steppes of Achav. And I believe that brings us to the conclusion of the Shomron. If anyone has questions or comments, and